Let me tell you something before this story begins. Most stories about abandoned children end one of two ways. Either the child spends their whole life broken, cycling through the damage, wearing the wound like an identity, becoming a cautionary tale that other people use to feel better about their own lives. Or the child gets revenge. Loud, dramatic, satisfying revenge. The kind that makes an audience cheer and then forget about it by the next morning. This story does neither. And that is precisely why it is going to stay with you. If you are watching this for the first time, stop. Go back. Watch part 1 and part 2 first. Not because you won't understand what happens in this room today, but because you won't feel it the way it deserves to be felt unless you have walked the full distance of this road with Devian Holloway. For those of you who have been here since the beginning, since the gray hoodie, since the glass of water that stopped mid-air, since the television that said 3 words that cracked 16 years of careful building, welcome back. This is the final part. This is the room. And I need you to understand something before we go inside it. What is about to happen in that conference room is not the climax of a revenge story. It is the completion of an identity. It is a young man who was called the child in a letter that was supposed to be a goodbye, walking into a room as a man with a name, a company, a purpose, and a clarity about who he is that no one, not absence, not silence, not 16 years of a blank on a form, was ever able to take from him. The father in that room is going to see something today. The question is whether he is capable of understanding what he is looking at. Let's go in. Devian Holloway wakes up at 5:47 a.m. Not because his alarm goes off, his alarm is set for 6. He wakes up 13 minutes before it because his body has been running on a particular kind of alert for the past 3 days. The low-frequency hum of someone who knows something significant is coming and cannot fully stand down even in sleep. He lies in the dark for a moment. His apartment is quiet, the new one, the one with the skyline view, the one that replaced the brick wall with something worth looking at. Through the window, the Atlanta pre-dawn is doing what Atlanta pre-dawn does in early autumn. Purple-gray sky, the city lights still holding their night positions before the morning arrives to relieve them. He does not reach for his phone. He does not check his email. He does not run through his presentation one more time in his head, because he has done that enough. You reach a point of preparation where more preparation becomes avoidance, and Devian Holloway has never been a person who confuses motion with readiness. He is ready. He has been ready in some form since he was 16 years old, sitting on a couch in a gray hoodie watching a television that told him something he was not supposed to know. He gets up. He showers. He makes coffee, not because he particularly needs it, but because the ritual of it is grounding, the specific sequence of small deliberate actions that tells the body. Today is real, today is happening, you are here and you are prepared. He stands at the kitchen window with his coffee and watches the city come awake. Atlanta is a city that was burned to the ground once and rebuilt itself so completely that most of the people who live there now have no daily relationship with that history. It is just the city, just the place, just home. But Devian has always known it, has always understood, somewhere underneath his conscious thinking, that there is something particular about being from a place that was destroyed and rebuilt. That the city carries in its bones the knowledge that starting over is possible. That what was taken does not have to be the end of the story. His father chose Seoul.
Devions chose Atlanta.
And Atlanta, in its way, chose him back. He sets the coffee cup down, gets dressed. The suit is the one he laid out the night before. Dark navy, not black, the difference matters, though most people can't articulate why. Black is armor. Navy is authority. He is not going into that room to defend himself. He is going in to do a job he is extraordinarily qualified for, and he is going to do it with the full weight of everything he built pressing behind him like a hand on his back. White shirt. No tie, a deliberate choice. He thought about it for 2 days. A tie would signal formality, the traditional Korean corporate respect for hierarchy through appearance. No tie signals something different. Confidence so settled it doesn't need performance. He knows Korean corporate culture well enough to know that the most powerful people in any room are the ones who don't need the costume. He checks himself in the mirror. For a moment, just a moment, he sees the barbershop mirror from 2 years ago. Mr. Curtis behind him, saying casually what nobody had ever said out loud. You look more like your daddy every year. He looks at his eyes. The slight elongation at the outer corners. The particular patience in them. The way they hold things quietly before the rest of the face decides what to do. He has made his peace with these eyes. They are not his father's eyes on his face. They are his eyes. They have always been his eyes. They just happen to carry the visible evidence of a heritage that was withheld from him and that he went out and claimed for himself anyway. He picks up his laptop bag, picks up his phone. One unread message from Khalad, sent at 5:30 a.m., which means Khalad was awake at 5:30 a.m., which means Khalad did not sleep particularly well either. The message says, walk in like you already own the outcome. Because you do. Call me after. Devian reads it twice. Types back, already walking. He puts the phone in his pocket, opens his front door, steps out into the Atlanta morning. Park Global Technologies' Atlanta office occupies the 14th and 15th floors of a glass tower in Midtown, the kind of building that exists in every major American city, designed to signal permanence and competence without saying anything specific about the people inside it. Devian has driven past this building. He has walked past this building. He has never been inside it. He arrives 12 minutes early, not 10, not 15, 12. Early enough to be professional, specific enough to signal that he calibrates his time precisely. This is something Dr. Han taught him, though she never said it directly. She simply always arrived at exactly the right moment, and he eventually understood that was not accident. The lobby is what corporate lobbies are. Marble floors, a security desk, the particular acoustic quality of a space designed to make you aware of its scale. A reception area with the Park Global Technologies logo on the wall in the same clean silver letters he saw once before on a building in Gangnam, on a Saturday afternoon, when he stood on the sidewalk for 4 minutes and then turned around and walked away because he wasn't ready. He was not ready then. He walks to the reception desk now and gives his name without hesitation. Devian Holloway, Holloway Bridge Consulting. I have a 9 o'clock with the Park Global team. The receptionist, a young Korean-American woman, professional and efficient, checks her screen and nods. Of course, Mr. Holloway. I'll let them know you're here. Can I get you anything while you wait? I'm fine, thank you, he says. He takes a seat in the waiting area. He does not check his phone. He does not review his notes. He sits with the particular quality of stillness that has been native to him since he was a small boy in a kindergarten classroom who sat completely still in his chair while other children squirmed. He looks around the lobby. There are framed photographs on the walls, Park Global's milestones. A groundbreaking ceremony. A product launch. A group photograph from what appears to be a company anniversary, perhaps the 15th or 20th. Rows of smiling faces in corporate formation. And there, in the center of one of the larger frames, a photograph from what the plaque below identifies as the company's 20th anniversary celebration, Seoul headquarters, 3 years ago. Park Min-jun. Standing in the center of the frame, surrounded by executives and board members. His hand resting on the shoulder of the young man beside him, Seo-jun, maybe 19 now in this photograph, the same clean-cut, fitted blazer boy from the television screen, older now, beginning to look like the company he was bred to inherit. Devian looks at the photograph for a long moment. His father does not know he is in this building. His father does not know he exists in any form that matters to this company. His father is somewhere on the 14th or 15th floor right now, preparing for a 9 o'clock meeting with a consultant his business development team identified through a directory, a meeting about cultural strategy and market intelligence. A meeting that his team has told him is with someone exceptionally prepared. His father has no idea. The elevator opens. David Shin, 30s, efficient, the particular energy of someone who is good at his job and knows it, steps out and walks toward Devian with a hand extended. Mr. Holloway, David Shin. Great to finally meet you in person. Devian stands, shakes his hand. Steady, measured. Likewise, he says. Thank you for having me. The team is very much looking forward to this. David says, gesturing toward the elevator. Shall we? Let's, Devian says. They step into the elevator. The doors close. Devian watches the floor numbers rise. 14, 15. The doors open. Here is something that nobody tells you about the moments you have been building toward your entire life. They do not announce themselves. There is no swelling music. There is no slow motion. There is no cinematic pause where the universe acknowledges the weight of what is about to happen. There is just a hallway, and then a door, and then a conference room. The conference room on the 15th floor of the Park Global Atlanta office is exactly what it is. A large rectangular table, 12 chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over Midtown Atlanta. A presentation screen at one end, water glasses already filled. The particular corporate neutral temperature that every conference room in every glass tower in every major city maintains regardless of the season outside. There are 4 people already in the room when David leads Devian through the door. 2 are from the Atlanta office. A director of operations named Jennifer Park, no relation, and a senior analyst named Thomas whose last name Devian doesn't catch in the introduction. Both stand when he enters. Both extend hands. Devian shakes them, names names, maintains the practiced ease of someone who has been in enough rooms now to know how to enter one. The third person is a man Devian doesn't recognize, a sole executive, late 50s, introduced as Deputy Director Hansu. He nods formally, the slight dip of the head that carries hierarchy in Korean professional culture, and Devian returns it with exactly the right calibration, respectful but not deferential, the response of someone who understands the language of the gesture.
Deputy Director Anso Noutisis.
Something moves in his expression. Barely, just a flicker of recalibration. The fourth person is standing at the window with his back to the room, looking out over Atlanta. David says, and of course you'll know our CEO, Park Min-jun, who flew in from Seoul specifically for this partnership discussion. The man at the window turns. This is the moment. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not the way Devian imagined it when he was 16 and the glass of water hit the table. Not the way he feared it might be when he was 18 at 2 a.m. and the search results came back 12 pages long. Just a man turning from a window, and a son standing in the doorway of a room. Park Min-jun is 51 years old. He is exactly what the photographs showed. Composed, distinguished, the particular bearing of a man who has occupied positions of authority for long enough that authority has become his default posture. His hair is silver at the temples now in a way that wasn't visible in older photographs. His face carries the years but carries them well. The strong jaw, the precise cheekbones, the eyes that hold expression carefully. He looks at Devian. He sees a young man in a navy suit, 22 years old, dark skin, short natural hair, the confident, grounded stillness of someone who is entirely comfortable in this room. And then, something happens in Park Min-jun's face. It is not recognition. Not yet. It is something that precedes recognition, the body knowing something before the mind has assembled the evidence. A flicker. A hesitation so brief that no one else in the room sees it. A moment where his eyes do something that eyes do when they encounter a face they have been carrying in some interior space for a very long time without knowing they were carrying it. He recovers in less than a second. Extends his hand. Mr. Holloway.
Min-jun Park.
Welcome. His English is precise and formal. The accent of someone who learned the language seriously and uses it professionally. Devian takes his hand. Shakes it. Thank you for the invitation, Devian says. His voice is steady. His hand is steady. He has been preparing for this handshake in one form or another for 6 years. They hold the grip for exactly the right number of seconds. Let go. Everyone takes their seats. The meeting begins. Here is what nobody in that room knows except Devian. The meeting is extraordinary. Not because of what is underneath it. Not because of the extraordinary private weight that Devian is carrying into every sentence he speaks. But because the work is extraordinary. Because Holloway Bridge Consulting is exactly what Park Global Technologies needs, and Devian Holloway is exactly the person he has spent 22 years becoming. And when those two things meet in a conference room, the result is undeniable regardless of anything else that is happening in the room. He presents for 40 minutes. He has prepared a full cultural intelligence audit of Park Global's current Atlanta operations, not just the surface-level observations that any competent consultant might offer, but the deep structural analysis that comes from someone who understands Korean corporate psychology from the inside and American business culture from lived experience. He explains Kibin, the Korean concept of mood and atmosphere in professional relationships, the way it functions as the invisible infrastructure of every Korean business interaction, the way its absence in American partnerships consistently creates friction that both sides feel but neither side can name because they don't have the word for it. He explains the specific communication gap that emerges when Korean executives who are accustomed to nunchi, the art of reading what is not said, encounter American counterparts who operate on radical directness and interpret Korean indirectness as evasion rather than respect. He explains how hierarchy functions in Korean corporate culture not as bureaucracy but as a form of care, the senior person's responsibility to the junior person's respect for the senior, the particular dance of jong that builds genuine loyalty over time in ways that transactional Western business culture almost never achieves. He speaks some of this in Korean. Measured. Precise. The Korean of someone who earned it rather than inherited it, which carries its own particular credibility in a Korean professional context because it signals commitment rather than assumption. Deputy Director Han-soo has stopped taking notes. He is simply watching Devian. Jennifer Park and Thomas are engaged in the way that people get engaged when something exceeds their expectations in a specific and useful direction. David Shin is nodding with the expression of someone who is very glad they made this call. And Park Min-joon is doing something that none of the others can see because none of them are watching for it. He is looking at Devian the way a man looks at something he cannot yet name but cannot stop looking at. He is looking at the eyes, the slight elongation at the outer corners, the particular way they hold expression before the face catches up. He is looking at a face that carries, in its bone structure and in the specific geography of its features, a combination that should not be statistically possible in this room. A combination that he has seen exactly once before in his life, in the mirror, in the photographs of himself as a young man, in the face of his legitimate son Seo-jun who carries the Park family structure in every angle. He is looking at a ghost, not a supernatural ghost. The kind that is worse, the kind made of choices. He does not interrupt the presentation. He asks two questions when it concludes, precise, substantive questions that reveal a sophisticated understanding of what has just been presented. He is a serious businessman. He is not going to let what is happening inside him compromise what is happening in this room. But when the meeting concludes and David begins organizing next steps and Jennifer is pulling up contract timelines on her laptop, Min-joon says, "Mr. Holloway, do you have a few minutes? I'd like to discuss the sole partnership component directly, if you don't mind." David looks up. Min-joon says, "We can use the smaller meeting room. It won't take long." David nods. Of course. Everyone begins gathering their materials. Devian closes his laptop. He has been waiting for this moment. He is ready for it. He is terrified of it. He stands up, follows Park Min-joon out of the conference room, down the hall, into the smaller room. The door closes. It is a room with no windows. Just a small table, 4 chairs, a whiteboard, and the two of them. Park Min-joon does not sit immediately. He stands near the table with his hands resting on the back of a chair, and he looks at Devian with an expression that has finally, in the privacy of this room, allowed something through that the conference room face was holding back. He looks like a man who has just opened a door he has been standing outside for 22 years. He says, in English, "Your name." Not a question. A statement. He is confirming something he is already assembling. Devian looks at him steadily. "Devian Holloway," he says. "Holloway."
Minyoon Upsopslis.
"Your mother's name." "Her family name, yes." "Your mother is Diane," Min-joon says. Not a question. The room goes very still. "Yes," Devian says. Min-joon closes his eyes for a moment. Just a moment. The gesture of a man receiving confirmation of something that has already rearranged everything inside him. When he opens them, they are wet. He does not let the tears fall. He is, after all, a man who has spent 30 years learning to maintain control in rooms where control is currency. But they are there, present, visible. "I knew," he says quietly. "When you walked in, something I knew. I didn't let myself." He stops, chooses different words. "The eyes. You have." "I know what I have," Devian says. His voice is quiet, completely level, not cold level. The voice of someone who has been in this conversation in his head for years and knows exactly where he stands inside it. Min-joon looks at him. "How long have you known about me?" he asks. My whole life, Devian says. My mother told me when I was 9. I found your letter when I was 14.
Minyon receives.
The letter, he says. The one where you called me the child, Devian says. Not my child. Not your son. The child. Like I was something that had happened to a situation rather than a person who was going to grow up and need a name. Minjun does not defend this. He does not explain it or contextualize it or reach for the vocabulary of self-justification that most people reach for when their worst moments are laid out in front of them. He just says, yes. One word. The weight of it fills the room. I saw you on television, Devian says. I was 16. Fox News. Morning segment. You were being interviewed about your company. You had your hand on Seo Jun's shoulder. Minjun is very still. You said he was your only son. The silence that follows is the kind of silence that has texture, that you can feel against your skin. Minjun looks at the table. I know, he says. I have thought about that moment. More than you know. More than you would believe. I did not know in that moment who might be watching. I did not, he stops.
No.
That is not sufficient. That is not, I was not thinking about you. That is the truth. I had made a decision 22 years earlier to not think about you. And I had enforced that decision every day with the same discipline I applied to everything else in my life. And in that moment, I was performing the life I had built. I was not thinking about the life I had. He cannot finish the sentence. Abandoned, Devian says, not aggressively, just completing it, offering the word that is accurate and allowing it to be accurate without embellishment. Yes, Minjun says, abandoned. Here is the thing about the truth that this story has always been building toward. It is not simple. It is not the truth of a cartoon villain who never loved anyone and chose power over family without cost or consequence. Stories like that are satisfying in the way that junk food is satisfying, immediate and then empty. The truth in this room is more complicated and therefore more painful and therefore more real.
Minyon sits down.
Devian sits down. And because Devian is who he is, a person who has always wanted the full picture rather than the comfortable partial version. He asks the question he has been carrying since he was 9 years old. Why? Not how could you? Not what is wrong with you? Just the question at the bottom of everything. Minjun looks at his hands on the table, and he tells the truth. My father, he begins, was not a man who asked. He was a man who decided. For everyone around him, for everything connected to his name. I was the oldest son. In Korean families of that generation, particularly families with wealth, with a company, with a legacy to protect, the oldest son is not a person in the way you would recognize. He is a continuation, a vessel, the thing the family has been building toward for 2 or 3 generations. You do not get to want what you want. You get to want what the family needs. He pauses. I loved your mother, he says. Devian says nothing. I want you to know that. I am not saying it to excuse anything. I am saying it because it is true and you deserve the true version. I loved her in a way I had never loved anyone before and have not loved anyone in the same way since. She is the kind of person who makes you feel that being honest is safe. That you can set down whatever performance you've been maintaining and just be a person. I had never had that before. Not once in my life. He looks at Devian. When she told me she was pregnant, I want to say I was surprised, but the truth is I was terrified. Not of the child. Of my father. Of the call I knew I would have to make. Of the voice I would hear on the other end of that call, and what it would say and what it would cost me if I did not comply. And you complied, Devian says.
I complied, Minyon says.
I want to tell you that I fought, that I argued, that I tried to find another way. But the honest version is that the conversation with my father lasted 47 minutes, and in that 47 minutes I understood, with complete clarity, what the choice was. On one side, your mother, a child I had not met, a life in America that was not the life I had been built to live. On the other, my family, my country, my name, my father's company, 20 years of investment and preparation and expectation, and the specific kind of love that wealthy Korean families of that generation give their sons. Conditional, demanding, but real. Unmistakably real. He is quiet for a moment. I chose the side that felt like survival, he says. And I have spent 22 years understanding that in doing so I committed the worst act of cowardice in my life. Because survival is not the same as living. And I have been surviving ever since. Devian looks at this man across the table. His father. The man who left. The man who built an empire and stood on television and said 3 words that cracked something open in a 16-year-old boy in a gray hoodie, who went on to build something extraordinary specifically because those words clarified something that needed to be clarified. He looks at him and he feels, not what he expected. He has prepared for anger. He has prepared for grief. He has prepared for the particular cold satisfaction of watching a powerful man reduced to honesty. What he feels is something he does not immediately have a word for. He feels it the way you feel complex chords in music. Multiple things resonating simultaneously, none of them canceling the others out. He feels sad, not for himself. He has done the work on his own sadness. Years of it, kitchen tables and bathroom mirrors and soul journals and barbershop revelations and Dr. Han's office and Claude's honesty and his mother's particular brand of fierce, decided love. He feels sad for the man across from him. For the boy that man once was. For the 47-minute phone call that took place before Devian existed and shaped everything that came after. For a system, a family, a culture, a set of expectations that treated a human being as a continuation rather than a person and produced, in the process, a man who chose survival over love and has been paying for it in ways that don't show up on 12 pages of search results. This is not forgiveness. Let that be clear. This is understanding. They are not the same thing. I received your email, Minjun says. Devian looks at him. The one you sent before college. I read it many times. I replied, I don't know if I got your reply, Devian says. Did it? It did what it needed to do. It confirmed that you were capable of honesty. That was enough for that moment.
Minhyun nods slowly.
I have followed you, he says, since that email. Quietly. I am not saying that to claim something I didn't earn. I watched from a distance because I did not have the right to do more than that. I saw Holloway Bridge in the directory and I told David about the company before he contacted you. I said it seemed like a strong fit. I did not tell him why I thought so. Devian absorbs this. You engineered the contact, he says. I created the opening, Minjun says carefully. I did not know if you would take it. I did not know what you knew or whether you wanted any proximity to anything connected to me. I only knew that your company was real and the work was excellent and that if there was a door to walk through, you deserved to be the one to choose whether to walk through it. I walked through it, Devian says. You did, Minjun says. And the presentation you gave today. He stops. Something moves through his expression. Your mother.
Minhyun waits.
You did not ruin me, Devian says. I know that might be the story you tell yourself. The one where your leaving was the thing that defined me. The wound that I have spent my whole life bleeding from. That is not what happened. What happened is that your leaving created a space. And my mother filled that space with everything she had. And I filled whatever she couldn't reach with everything I had. And the result, the company, the work, the person sitting across this table from you right now, that is not in spite of the wound. That is what the wound became when 2 people refused to let it be the whole story. He leans forward slightly. You did not make me. You also did not break me. You were an absence. And I built myself in the shape of that absence, around it, through it, past it. The version of me that exists is not your legacy. It is mine. It is my mother's. It belongs to a kitchen table in Southwest Atlanta and a grandmother in Mapo and a professor who called me a bridge and a best friend who told me on the first day that I was going to be dangerous. He pauses. It does not belong to you. Minjun is very still. But, Devian continues. Here is what I will give you. Not because you deserve it. Because I have decided that carrying things that are not mine to carry is not something I am willing to do anymore. He looks at his father directly. I don't hate you. I want you to know that. Not because I think you've earned my grace. But because hatred is a thing you carry inside yourself and it is heavy and I put mine down years ago. I don't need it. I built something real. I have a mother who is the finest person I have ever known. I have a language in my chest that I earned. I have a culture that I claimed for myself because it was always mine regardless of whether you were there to give it to me. I have eyes that are both things at once, and I have finally made my peace with that. He sits back. You called another boy your only son on national television. I watched that from 30 blocks away in a gray hoodie. And you know what it did? Clarified something. It made me understand that I was never going to wait for you to decide I was worth claiming. I was going to go out and become undeniable. And then you were going to find out, whether you knew it or not, that the child you left behind turned out to be someone extraordinary. A long silence. Then, my mother made sure of that. Park Min-joon does not speak for a long time. When he does, his voice is different from the boardroom voice. Different from the executive voice. Different from the polished, practiced voice of a man who has given 100 interviews and sat at 100 conference tables and built a company that generated 12 pages of search results. He speaks in the voice of a man who has been carrying something for 22 years and has just been given permission, not by being forgiven, but by being seen clearly, to finally set it down. I have a question, he says, and you don't have to answer it. I have no right to ask it. But, ask, Devian says. Are you well? Not professionally. Not the company. Do you have people around you? Do you have a life that? He can't complete the question. But Devian hears it. The question underneath the question. The one that a father who was absent for 22 years and knows it and has no framework for asking for anything better asks instead. Did you make it? Not the company. Did you make it? Devian looks at him. And something in him, the very deepest part, the part that was 4 years old drawing a family portrait with only 2 figures and 5 years old in the doorway in pajamas asking Mama, where's my daddy? That part exhales. Yes, he says simply. I made it.
Min-joon nods.
He puts his hand over his mouth for a moment. A gesture that is trying to hold something in. Good, he says when he can. Good. They sit in the silence of that for a moment. Two people who share blood and a history that cannot be undone. Sitting in a room without windows in Atlanta, Georgia, arriving at the only truth that was ever available to them. Not reconciliation. That would take years and might not be possible, and neither of them is pretending otherwise. Not forgiveness. That is not what today is. Just recognition. Mutual, honest, unadorned recognition of exactly what happened and exactly what it cost and exactly what was built in the space of that cost by two people, Devian and Diane, who were handed very little and refused to stay small. They go back to the main conference room. The business meeting resumes. And here is the thing that matters, the thing that is most true about who Devian Holloway is. He is extraordinary in that meeting. Not because of the conversation that just happened in the smaller room. Not because adrenaline or emotion or the weight of 22 years has pushed him into some heightened state. Because he is simply excellent at what he does. He has always been excellent at what he does. He answers questions precisely. He offers frameworks that the team recognizes as immediately useful. He demonstrates, for the remaining 90 minutes of the meeting, exactly why David Shin told his boss that Holloway Bridge was the most prepared consultancy they had spoken to by a significant margin. Park Min-joon participates in the meeting. He asks good questions. He is a serious businessman. He does not let what happened in the small room contaminate what is happening in this room, because to do so would be to disrespect the work, and whatever else Min-joon Park is, he respects serious work. But once, just once, during a moment when Devian is mid-explanation and the room is engaged and everyone is leaning forward slightly, Min-joon looks at his son across the table. Not as a CEO. Not as a man managing his public face. Just as a person looking at another person. Devian catches it, holds it for a moment, then looks back at his notes, and keeps going. The contract is signed 2 weeks later. Holloway Bridge Consulting becomes the official cultural intelligence partner for Park Global Technologies' Southeast American expansion. Devian's name, his full name, Devian Holloway, is on the contract. On the same document as Park Min-joon's signature. He calls his mother from the parking garage. Not from the lobby, where professional composure is required. Not from the elevator where there are other people. From the parking garage, the particular privacy of a concrete space between floors, the kind of place where nobody is performing anything for anybody. She picks up on the second ring. She always picks up on the second ring. He doesn't say anything for a moment. She waits. She is good at waiting. It happened, he says. I know, she says. Tell me. And he does. All of it. The lobby photograph. The handshake. The eyes. The smaller room. The 47 minutes. The letter. The television. Everything said and everything not said and everything that landed and everything that was given and everything that was not forgiven, not yet, maybe not ever fully, but understood. Diane listens to every word. When he finishes, the parking garage is very quiet. Are you okay? She asks. Yes, he says. I think I'm actually, yes.
I'm okay.
Did you say what you needed to say? Everything. Did he hear you? Devian thinks about this carefully. About the man in the smaller room. About the voice that changed when it stopped being the CEO voice. About the hand over the mouth. About did you make it? Not the company. You. Yes, he says. He heard me. He said you were the finest person he had ever known. Silence on the line. A very long silence. Well, Diane says finally. Her voice is careful, but there is something underneath the careful. He was right about that. Devian laughs. From the stomach. Real. She laughs too, small, private. The laugh of a woman who has been carrying this city and this story and this son for 22 years and is finally, completely, all the way out, breathing. Go home, she says. Eat something. Call Claude before he has a medical event from waiting. Yes, ma'am, he says. Devian. Yeah. I am so proud of you. Not for the meeting. Not for the contract. For the person you went in there as. That person. That's everything I ever wanted to give you. And you took it and you made it bigger than I knew how to dream. He presses his lips together. I love you, he says. I love you, she says. Now go eat. He hangs up. Sits in the car for a moment. The parking garage is quiet. Somewhere above him, on the 15th floor, Park Min-jun is in a conversation with his team about next steps and contract timelines. Somewhere in the future, weeks from now, months, Devian doesn't know. Min-jun is going to have a conversation with his son Seo-jun. About a letter. About a choice. About a Tuesday night in August when a 26-year-old Korean graduate student sat across from a woman he loved at a dinner table and slid a pregnancy test toward him and watched his face and counted 47 minutes on a clock. That conversation is not Devian's to control or predict or carry. He has done what he came here to do. He starts the car. Drives home. I want to stop here. Before the final words of this story. Because this is the part that is educative. The part that I promised you. The part that matters beyond Devian and Diane and Min-jun and this story. What this story has been about. Underneath the emotion, underneath the abandonment and the resilience and the boardroom, is something that affects millions of people and that we almost never talk about with the honesty it deserves. It is about the inheritance of identity. And what happens when that inheritance is withheld. Here is what the research tells us. And this is real, this is documented, this matters. Children who grow up without one parent, particularly without a father, and particularly in circumstances where that absence is the result of deliberate choice rather than death or unavoidable circumstance, carry a specific psychological weight that is different from other kinds of loss. Because unlike grief, which has a beginning and a shape and a cultural framework, this kind of loss is ambiguous. It is the loss of something that never existed. And ambiguous loss, the term coined by researcher Pauline Boss, is one of the most psychologically complex forms of grief because it has no clear object to mourn, no ceremony, no social recognition, no permission to fully feel it. The child did not lose a parent. The child was denied one. And that denial, when it comes from a living, functioning, successful person who simply chose to be absent, creates a particular kind of wound that does not respond to the usual frameworks of grief and healing. Because the parent is still out there, still breathing, still building things, still calling other people family on national television. What Devian did, what this story has been tracking across 3 parts, is something that the research identifies as one of the healthiest responses to this specific wound, and it has a name. It is called identity integration. It is the process by which a person who has been denied part of their heritage, their culture, their ancestry, their biological inheritance, stops waiting for the withholding person to give them permission to claim it, and instead claims it directly, separates the heritage from the person who failed to transmit it properly, understands that culture, language, ancestry, and belonging are not owned by the individual who happens to carry them biologically. They belong to everyone who carries them, regardless of whether the transmission happened the right way or the wrong way or didn't happen at all and had to be rebuilt from scratch. Devian taught himself Korean. He went to Seoul. He stood in front of calligraphy and let it speak to something in his chest. He sat with a grandmother who set down her chopsticks and told him the bravest kind of knowing was claiming what you were owed without waiting for the one who owed it. He built a company that used both halves of his heritage simultaneously. He did not need Park Min-joon to give him his Korean identity. He went and took it. That is identity integration. And it is available to every single person who is watching this video and recognizes something of their own story in Deviance. You do not need the person who withheld your inheritance to give it back to you. It was always yours. Go and take it. There is one more thing. And this one is for the fathers, or the mothers, or the parents of any kind who are watching this and recognizing themselves in Min-joon. Not the dramatic version, not the villain, but the quieter, more common version. The person who made a choice driven by fear or pressure or self-preservation that cost a child something they had no right to take. The research on this is clear and it is uncomfortable. Children who are abandoned by a parent, even when they go on to build extraordinary lives, even when they do the healing work and integrate their identity and refuse to let the wound define them, carry what developmental psychologists call an attachment scar. Not a wound that prevents functioning. A scar that changes the texture of certain experiences. The particular alertness in rooms where they feel like they don't belong. The specific difficulty of trusting that people who say they will stay actually will. The way certain silences feel different from how they feel to people who grew up with both parents present. These scars do not disqualify you from a good life. Devian Holloway has a good life. But they are real. And they are permanent. And they are the direct result of a choice that an adult made when a child had no say in the matter. If you are a parent who has made a version of this choice, who has an absent child somewhere, a child who knows your name and has maybe looked you up and found 12 pages of search results while their own name comes back thin and scattered, I am not going to tell you what to do. But I will tell you this. The child did not stop existing because you stopped looking. They grew up. And they may have built something extraordinary. And the door, for now, is still open. Not because you deserve for it to be open. But because some people, the extraordinary ones, the ones raised by women like Diane, choose to leave it open anyway. Not for you. For themselves. Because they decided that carrying things that are not theirs to carry is not something they are willing to do anymore. Devian Holloway is 22 years old. He has a company. Holloway Bridge Consulting. A real one now, not just the rented room with the whiteboard and the second-hand chairs, though that room still exists and he still works there most days because he is not a person who performs success for external audiences. The company has 3 clients. Soon it will have 4. The Park Global contract is the most substantial thing on the books and it is excellent work and he does it with the full depth of everything he is. He calls his mother every Sunday. She is 40 years old now, not old, not even close, but old enough that when Devian looks at her he sometimes sees, faint and overlaid like a second photograph on the same paper, the young woman who labored through a power outage in October with a single nurse holding a flashlight and made a decision. She decided he would be enough. She decided she would be enough. She was right on both counts. She took the Paris trip. She has been talking about going back. Devian has been quietly putting money aside for 2 tickets. He texts Jiho every few weeks. They have talked about Devian coming back to Seoul, this time not for an exchange program, not for personal archaeology, but for business. Because Holloway Bridge has clients who need someone in Seoul and Seoul has always, in some form, been his. He still has the calligraphy set on his desk. He still has the framed photograph of the creme brulee above his desk. He still has the notebook with Devian on the cover. He has not spoken to Park Min-joon since the day of the meeting. They communicate through David Shin and the professional infrastructure of the contract. That is appropriate. That is, for now, what is possible. Whether it becomes more than that is a question that belongs to time and to both of them in equal measure and that neither of them is rushing. He does not know what Seo Jun has been told or will be told or how. He does not think about it often. It is not his to think about. There is one more thing. On a Tuesday evening in October, his 23rd birthday, in fact, though he has never made much of his birthday, Devian is sitting at his desk in the rented office. He opens his laptop, types his name into the search bar. Devian Holloway. He presses enter. The results are different now. Holloway Bridge Consulting website. A feature in an Atlanta business journal about emerging consultancies in the Southeast market. A mention in a Korean-American business network newsletter. A conference speaking invitation he accepted last month. A photograph from a Georgia Tech alumni event where he is mid-sentence, clearly in the middle of something worth saying. More pages than before. Not 12. Not yet. But growing. He sits with that for a moment. The strange, clean satisfaction of a name that is beginning to mean something in the world. A name that came from his mother's family, not his father's. A name that he carried through a dimly lit apartment with mismatched furniture and a brick wall view. A name that went to Seoul and sat with grandmothers and built a language from scratch and stood in front of a glass tower for 4 minutes and then turned around and walked away because the time wasn't right. The same name that walked back into that tower, 2 years later on his own terms, and sat across a conference table from a man who once stood on national television and said 3 words that cracked the world open. My only son. Devian closes the laptop, gets up, drinks a glass of water standing at the office window. Atlanta below him, his city, his mother's city, the city that was burned to the ground and rebuilt itself so thoroughly that most people who live there now have no daily relationship with that history. Devian has always had a relationship with that history. He is, in some sense, that history, burned down before he was fully built. Rebuilt by 2 people, himself and his mother, who refused to let the fire be the end of the story. He puts the glass down, goes back to his desk, opens the business plan. He has work to do. I need you to sit with something before you close this video, because this story is finished. Not because every question is answered. Not because every wound is healed. Not because Park Min-jun is redeemed or Seo Jun has been told or Diane has received every apology she deserves. She hasn't, and she may never. But because the story that needed to be told, the story of who Devian Holloway chose to become in the space left by a man who chose to leave, that story is complete. And I want to say something directly to you. If you watched all 3 parts of this, if you have been here since the gray hoodie, since the glass of water that stopped midair, since the number 16 in the comments that came from people sitting in Louisville and Barbados and West Palm Beach and 100 other places, then you already know why this story reached you. Because you have a kitchen table in your life. A place where the hardest conversations happened. Where someone sat across from you and told you the truth you weren't ready for. Where a hand reached across the wood grain and covered yours and told you that your name means something. Or maybe you have a blank on a form somewhere. A name that was never written in. An explanation that was never given. A face you've seen on a screen that belongs to someone who was supposed to claim you and didn't. And if that's you, if you are the child, grown now, still carrying the weight of someone else's cowardice, I want you to hear this. You do not need their permission. Not to claim your heritage. Not to claim your identity. Not to claim both halves of yourself or all 3, or however many tributaries flow into who you actually are. Not to build something real. Not to become undeniable. The inheritance that was withheld from you was always yours. Go and take it. A father is not the man who gives you his name. A father is the one who stays when the world gets hard. And if that person was not present in your life, if the one who stayed was a mother working 2 jobs in a kitchen that always smelled like something good, then you were not fatherless. You were raised by someone extraordinary. And so are you. That has always been the story. Devian turned off the television. And then he turned on. And then he walked into a room. And he was not the gray hoodie boy anymore. He was the whole story. He was always the whole story. So are you. This has been my only son. All 3 parts. If the story changed something in you, share it. Not for the algorithm. For the person in your life who needs to hear that what was taken from them was never the whole story. Thank you for being here from the beginning. Stay close. There are more stories coming. And they are all, in some form, about this. About choosing who you are. about building anyway, about being the whole story.